This review was written by various AI using my own as well as Jasper, GPT-3, and I read it for you. It does not reflect the opinions of this reviewer. So here's my ACG review for Spiderman Remastered. Subhead everyone, this is KARAK with ACG. It's my grueling journey to bring you reviews of video games that aren't tight on time and topped up with the brown fluff. If I get 100,000 likes, I'll do a part 2 of this, and if I don't, I maybe will. Moisturize this video. This game has danger flexes. The plot of Spider-Man is a tale as old as time. The classic story of two Peters. On one side, you have a teen Peter with attention issues who's weak-willed, unfocused, and not good with the opposite sex. On the other hand, you have a Spider-Man Peter who is the hero, always saving people, and even Peter's jealous of Spider-Man's total package and wants to be him all the time, sometimes. The internal conflict resonates. Spider-Man takes place in a real New York City. This isn't a game, it's the real place. And Spider-Man's really there, saving the city from villains and thugs, fighting crime and consistently waging war against bad people. The city's overrun by villains who don't like Spider-Man because he fights for good, so they team up against him as his Sinister Six. That's also a half dozen. Those enemies include Black and White Man, Electro, Surgeon Arms, and the nefarious Dirty Bird. It's Spider-Man's job to defend the city and save everyone. It's Peter's job to pretend he isn't Spider-Man. Peter's problems begin almost instantly. You see, the problem with having so many different Peters is always keeping everybody happy. While we don't get to see Peter gain his abilities to control spiders, lay eggs, or make webs, we do get to see his life and how terrible it is. At the starting of the game, you get to see Peter is a slob. He has pictures of old people, wires, energy bars, and a box of open noodles in his room. It's not recommended to leave noodles out for longer than 2 hours, even without sauce. The oldest bowl of noodles was found to be 4,000 years old in northwest China. No one ate them, though. Peter Man even has a spider in his room. Spiders can be kept as pets, but they shouldn't be left alone with children or let out at night without a collar. Spiders can catch birds, but they aren't enemies. Spider-Man's first enemy is Fisk. Peter gets a call for help. He finds his pants and leaps out the window. His transformation into Spider-Man is now complete. Fisk is a massive fat man. Obesity isn't a joke, though, and occurs when a person's body mass index is above 30. A sign of obesity is snoring, sweating more than usual, small clothes, and a big face. Fisk's is above 300. Spider-Man knows Fisk won't come out, so he helps a man into Fisk's building and then starts fighting Fisk's bodyguards and people hiding in the building for safety. Spider-Man hacks the computer because Fisk didn't patch Windows. Fisk tells Spider-Man he was helping the city by making the criminals run around a lot. Spider-Man tells him he's lying and then lifts some rocks off girls. Spider-Man likes to lift up heavy objects. You can tell because he does this a lot in movies, cartoons, and even in this game. Fisk sends rocket men to attack Spider-Man. When Spider-Man has squiggly lines coming out of his head, that means he can be targeted by attraction. Sometimes it's difficult to know if somebody's attracted to you or how someone feels about you, and when in doubt, you should just ask them for their true feelings. Spider senses don't help Spider-Man understand people's hearts, and it's Spider-Man and Peter's undoing. Fisk is morbidly obese and doesn't like to walk around a lot, so he waits behind a desk for Spider-Man to hurt all of his henchmen before he comes out. Peter teases Fisk about not being able to see, and Fisk gets angry because it's not nice to tease people. Spider-Man fights Fisk using slow motion and floating letters and then beats him up and wants to kiss him. The only time you can see under Spider-Man's mask is when he is kissing, so Peter doesn't. Afterwards, Spider-Man relaxes by leaping off a building and swinging away when he's called by a doctor with an emergency that can only be helped by his favorite student, Peter. The dark foreshadowing of the doctor's secret is revealed when he almost dies during an experiment and is chastised by a girl. Peter's given the day off because the doctor almost died, but don't worry, they don't hate each other. First, let's discuss the characters in Spider-Man. Peter Parker is a complex person, not just because he isn't good at paying rent or doing his job, but because he's always wearing a mask. One pretending to not be Spider-Man, the other pretending to want to be Peter. Even the villains wear masks sometimes because no one's happy with their faces in this game. Spider-Man hides his face because he's a kid, and kids play a lot of games, and a lot of kids love dressing up for Halloween. Spider-Man frequently wins the contest for characters most kids want to dress up as in Halloween. Yoda and Dinosaur are also high on that list. One year, Batman was the highest on the list. That's the only time Batman has ever beaten Spider-Man. Peter has a ton of responsibility in his life, and that starts as a scientist and as a teen. He hacks machines in the office, making them run better by moving circuits around and talking to himself. His brain is truly bigger than his head. It's Peter's consistent struggles between his two halves that pushes the game forward. When Peter finds out Dr. Octopus has more than 2 arms, he's afraid because it reminds him of his dad, and he doesn't want to lose another man in his life. So Peter protects him, though the doctor tells him not to. But the Doctor doesn't know what Spider-Man knows what's going on when it is. Those important facts about Spider-Man that he knows will be more important when they matter. Mary Jane. She's a perfect opposite of Peter. Where Peter's fun and boyish and full of charm, Mary Jane isn't. But the hero of the game might be Mary Jane. She's courageous as she is beautiful and loves to eat. She's equal to Peter, and though she has no superpowers, bravery and being a snob are her tools. Her scarf is not her hair. Mary Jane's a complex character with a number of important facets to her personality. The first is she likes to talk. The second is she can't always figure out what she wants in life, but she's always very opinionated. The third is she broke up with Peter, but can't remember why. Many teens report lack of communication as one of the reasons for breakups. Red eyes can be a sign someone's been crying, so if you see a child with red eyes, you better ask them what's up. Spider-Man's always on the guard for the secret enemy of Peter, known as Mary Jane. Another somewhat important character in Spider-Man is Spider-Man himself. He's the most complex of characters in the game, for many reasons that are known and some of them are not known but thought of. History's always shown time and again that the best heroes are kids. They're much more flexible and they can't be put in prison at a young age, which is important if they're performing illegal activities. Children can be sent to juvenile hall though, which is like a version of prison, but it's lighter and they write books about it a lot. Fighting crime is what Spider-Man does best. When you get to unwrap yourself from the unhappy Peter Parker image and instead enjoy the flighty, airy acrobatics of Spider-Man, that's when the game flies away. Spider-Man is a hero, courage in the face of evil and scariness. He isn't ashamed to ask for help though, and sometimes he'll call up Yuri to complain when he needs to. It's the Spider-Man-Peter Parker combination that weaves the illuminating story you get to experience in the game. There's an argument though if Spider-Man is the best superhero, but that's wrong. He is the best. He may punch enemies and kick them, throw them off buildings or stick them upside down to girders, and sometimes smash their faces off cars. Nevertheless, in all the instances, they are alive when he's done beating them up. Spider-Man never kills anyone. At worst, he leaves them encrusted and exhausted, covered in his white webbing. You can't bite enemies in Spider-Man. Spider bites aren't initially painful, but can be deadly serious, like the bite of the Black Widow. Black Widow is also the name for a woman who marries a man knowing he'll die. The game spans an entire fake city, and throughout the story space, you take down enemies around the city that bad guys like. Villains can be found everywhere. The enemies love high places in the Spider-Man game, many times taking over buildings on the top level even if there's no roof, and are more susceptible to Spider-Man's sticky maneuvers. While Mysterio is not in the game as a villain, Spider-Man is a game with a huge number of villains in it and many plots. One plot is centered around a doctor in a suit of arms. He wants to get G327, a deadly chemical that was originally made to help mankind, but it hurts them now, like hot soup. There are no definitive statistics on how many insurance policies are claimed for hot soup each year. However, there's been a number of high-profile cases in which people have successfully sued after sustaining injuries. Most hot soups are typically served at a temperature between 65 and 85 degrees Celsius. That's hot. But that young adventurousness can't last long. Just as Spider-Man is thrown a party because he defeated Fisk, a new group begins to take down Fisk's businesses as well as legitimate ones in the city. They call themselves demons. Spider-Man's not a priest, so he can't perform exorcisms. Spiders can't do them anyway. Spider-Man fights the demons and finds himself fighting many types of opponents in docks, on the streets, at wharfs, on buildings, and even inside of some of them. Peter begins to unravel the mystery of the demons and finds out they're just another gang led by a social worker running a soup kitchen named Mr. Black and White. He's named that because he has two sides and they're never in the same place at the same time, and because he doesn't like color. But he's not the only enemy that Spider-Man will face, because there's also a prison break. More than 20 prison breaks happen every year, with many inmates smuggling in digging supplies in their rectum or other secret orifices that guards don't dare search. In some prisons, they have fights in the basements, with the best fighter getting the best prison cell. The story might not be true. During these battles, Spider-Man still has to take care of Peter, who gets evicted because he can't pay his rent. Bosses don't like late workers, and heroes don't get paid in cash. Spider-Man takes Spider-Man through the city, accepting missions from poor people and doing science experiments on buildings, fog, or other boring objects. Spider-Man does have a lot of busy work in this game, but that's because Spider-Man doesn't actually handle his time effectively. And now for the real sadness of this game. Spider-Man only has 2 legs. This makes him very sad. Not all spiders have 8 legs. Some spiders have 6, while others may have more or less depending on the species. Spider-Man has 2 because he's a man first and a spider second. It's best not to forget that because it truly matters. Spider-Man also doesn't fight other spiders in Spider-Man. If he did, he'd win, because unlike normal spiders, Spider-Man has a brain the size of a big person's. He uses that brain to defeat enemies in combat. The combat is exceptional. No matter where Spider-Man is, he can always shoot his stuff at people and leave them sticky. You can punch and kick and do special moves against the enemies in the game and mix and match combos you unlock by throwing people around, which rewards you with spider points. They can be used to buy new suits and eyes. There's a couple types of enemies in the game. Low-level enemies. These are enemies that don't get a lot of attention. They walk around and guard places, and as long as you attack them stealthily and make sure they don't see you, you can stay unseen and hide them. But there are larger enemies in the game called brutes. They can be hard, especially if Spider-Man's fragile or you're a bad player. The best way to take them out is to slide underneath them, shoot stickies into their eyes, and bind them up, then hide them or hit them when they're defenseless. Another enemy type in the game are those with weapons. They can be hard. You really have to watch out because they shoot the weapons too. You can buy skills to get better at taking down brutes and enemies with weapons, but your best bet is to throw them off a roof or throw rockets at them. Because remember, Spider-Man doesn't kill. And he could. Just Spider-Man kicks alone could be lethal, but he holds back his power. He could even beat Joe Rogan, who also beat Francis Nagano's Power Cube kick. And Joe Rogan kicks hard. There's proof of that on the internet. But Spider-Man kicks harder. Stealth is also an important part of the gameplay. Spider-Man can wrap people up in webs and hang them from metal beams or smash their heads against poles and then stick them to building walls. It's possible to do many missions without being seen at all, especially if Spider-Man isn't seen. Never drop down to the floor if you're on the ceiling, because the floor is where you get stomped on. Spider-Man also has many gadgets you can use as well to trick the enemies because they aren't smart and spiders are crafty. Many of these enemies you face as Spider-Man are normal people with no names. They're just sacrifices for Peter so villains can get their work done. Spider-Man's classic web skills are available to the player, enabling them to blast webs, swing from building to building, climb up walls, and make trapdoors to pull enemies inside. Furthermore, the game features new elements never seen in a game ever, including vaulting over objects, ziplining along water towers, fire escape stairs, and performing takedowns of opponents, as well as walking around the city. When Spider-Man feels pretty, he can stop and take selfies and then send them to MJ. She doesn't answer though, because MJ isn't always where Peter wants her to be. And yes, it's true. Spider-Man can control spiders if he wanted to, but Spider-Man doesn't command, he asks. One problem with Spider-Man is the enemies just aren't very smart. The AI isn't very good for a lot of the times. For example, the car thieves just drive around in circles a lot of the time on the same blocks, sometimes, so catching them isn't that hard. New York's rate of vehicle theft has shot up 61% this year, so Spider-Man is bad at this. A lot of times you can trick the enemies by hiding above them or weaving patterns with your hands until they fall asleep. Spiders are mesmerizing, that is for sure. Let's talk about the auto presentation. Spider-Man was played by Tobey Maguire until he was replaced later by Tom Holland. No one has ever played Spider-Man other than that. Everyone sounds emotional and good, even when they're mad at each other. The best relationship in the game is where Dr. Octopus and Peter tell each other their secrets, and Peter doesn't have a dad because he isn't in the game, but Dr. Otto pretends to be his dad and does a really good job. Peter has 2 lines of voice acting for when he's swinging or sitting down, so it sounds like he's out of breath a lot. But the best voice acting in the game is most likely for Mary Jane. She's excellent. She sounds tense all the time. She's afraid of baggage. The music in the game is also amazing. It's like being right next to a speaker during a movie where they're playing or showing Spider-Man. You can hear every instrument play as you swing around. Have you ever heard music that just makes you want to yell loudly inside your own head? That's the music from Spider-Man. It's that good. The sound effects are also very well done. There's no barking spiders in Spider-Man. But there are a lot of punching and kicking, and the soft sound when Peter squirts is perfectly natural. When talking to someone about sex, it's best to be clear and very detailed. Many myths revolve around sex, and no, a woman's eggs don't die if she jumps on a trampoline. When we look at the graphics for Spider-Man, it's easy to notice the power of the PlayStation console that was shown off to great effect in this original game, and it's easy to see why so many experts in the field say there will never be a more powerful system ever made. Nevertheless, the PC version of the game is the highlight to electrical competence. The first part we need to talk about is ray tracing. Ray tracing is when you see the sunlights inside of a glassy area, and this game is all glass and rays. Light is made of photons, and despite the popular myth, you don't shoot them from your eyes. They're shot into your eyes from everywhere else. It's incredible. Every shadow is lit perfectly with accurate lighting. You can almost feel the sun of the cement when you run through water puddles at night. A popular website that covers women's fashion trends stated, Spider-Man is one of the most beautiful games of all time, and I leaked at seeing New York for real. But if you're looking for a game that shows lots of spiders, this isn't the game for you. The graphics are incredible and the lighting is unreal. Everything looks real, just like a comic book. The level design in Spider-Man is maybe the best level design in a video game ever, and it's easy to assume the developers copied a real city to create it. There's real traffic and people walking around the world, the cars drive around and ignore you, and the shops have clothes in them. There's a total of 15 mountains in the Spider-Man game. These include Aunt May's house, Daily Bugle, Fisk Tower, and others, but they don't have names, but they are mountains. While mountains have many weather systems, this game has 5. Rain, sun, night, foggy, and smoggy, just like New York. But the time of day doesn't change according to the time of day, it changes when you want it to. The animation for Spider-Man is perfect, always demonstrating Spider-Man's rubber body as he bends in ways most men can't. They captured Spider-Man perfectly, his twisty body and the comic antics of his movements as he fights enemies or swings around the city and looks into windows. Looking into windows or other openings of a building is considered voyeurism or trespass, and you can get 8 months in prison for it if you aren't good at hiding. Spider-Man never sticks around long. Each leap into the sky is another death-defying swing into action. And the boss battles are some of the best action. They're epic. One of the best fights is over a smoggy pipe, where Spider-Man fights a villain named Electro who controls electricity. That's how he got his name. The big question, though, is Spider-Man's face okay? That's a complex question, but a simple answer. Spider-Man's face is different in this version of the game because they weren't happy with the other man's face. It's much easier to replace someone's face in a game than in real life. In games, you can replace a face by digitally scanning them into a supercomputer and then telling someone where you want the new face to be, and it gets there. So that's your answer. His face is okay, but it isn't the same. Is the game fun? Yes. Even when Spider-Man is sad or talking to MJ, he's always ready for another part of the action. And while the slower parts when Peter's talking to his old mom, he never seems too far away from a quick getaway. Taking down criminals feels powerful, like you're beating up the helpless and really giving them a hard kicking. That's what a superhero does, isn't it? But the real sadness is that this game may never be topped, which has to make a developer sad. There's another sadness, though, and that's Peter. He's a boy, but already has the groans of a man, and his desire to love others always outweighs his own safety. He's a true hero in every way, brave, courageous, and fearful. The real pain in Spider-Man is that Peter can't find love regardless of which Peter he is. Love eludes him, like the answer to a puzzle he hasn't found yet, and never will. Peter's very young. He doesn't have a high measure of focus, so sometimes he decides to swing around the city when he's tired of helping people, sometimes stopping robberies, visiting the park, swimming in the ocean, or taking pictures of people who high-five him. Those are fun parts. And it also makes Spider-Man one of the best games ever made. It's a great example of a game that's so good that other developers may stop making games as competition because they can't keep up. But is the game worth it? Even if you don't have the money, Spider-Man is worth getting. Its magnificence is only outweighed by its brutality, and Spider-Man is the best hero in comics and now games ever. And certainly one of the most complex, maybe only being outdone by Nathan Drake, Claptrap, or Micah Bell in Red Dead, who is probably the best character ever because it's easy to hate him even if he's sometimes a friend. And the truest truth is that good friends will never be friends forever, and sometimes they make you call them enemies. And that is the motto of Spider-Man. While most spiders are solitary animals, there are some that form communities building large communal cobwebs. Spider-Man isn't one of those. Spider-Man lives alone. Friends don't stay friends forever. Thanks for being interesting. Lubricate this video, and if you like it, spread it. If you're not a subscriber, why? Check out the Patreon for pictures.